Hey guys, I'm Chris Buck, and a very warm welcome to Friday Fretworks. And this week we're taking a look at the accidental Les Paul tone that is hidden in plain sight. It still is responsible for some of the most iconic guitar tones ever recorded. We're of course talking about the middle position, out of phase. For anyone who's ever listened to or indeed marvelled at the late great Peter Green at the peak of his powers with either the Blues Breakers or indeed Fleetwood Mac, you may well have noticed something quite unusual about his guitar tone. And for anyone who's ever looked at his 59 Les Paul, of course later owned by Gary Moore and now owned by Kirk Hammett, you may well have noticed something quite unusual about the neck pickup in particular. Of course, it's one of the most famous instances of guitar folklore. Peter Green's Les Paul sounded unusual because his neck pickup was upside down. For anyone who's ever wondered about doing that or considered the effect that it may have, this is exactly what it does to your tone. Absolutely nothing, or at least very little. Of course, there was a lot more to Peter Green's unique guitar tone than simply one of his pickups being upside down. It was out of phase. But before we get into that, what does it even mean for a Les Paul to be out of phase? Now, a Les Paul, when it's in its middle position, is running in parallel, or is wired in parallel, which basically means that you have two independent volume controls for each individual pickup. And when wired correctly, the pickups are in phase, meaning that the two waveforms generated by each individual pickup peak and trough at the same time. When wired out of phase or incorrectly, when one waveform is near its peak, the other is nearing its trough, which gives you a very nasal, kind of quacky, hollow sound. That, admittedly, is not for everyone, but is responsible for some of the most distinctive guitar tones ever put to tape, and is widely associated with the likes of T-Bone Walker, Jimmy Page, Albert King, Hubert Sumlin, of course Peter Green. So if this is not just a case of flipping your pickup, how do we get a Les Paul out of phase? There are actually two ways of doing this, the first of which is electronic. You simply switch the hot and cold connectors coming from your pickup. The second is arguably the more traditional, more classic way that we're probably used to hearing on all of these classic records, and that is to switch the phase magnetically. This involves loosening the screws on the back of your pickup, pushing the bar magnet out of the side of the pickup and spinning it around 180 degrees, in essence reversing its magnetic polarity relative to the coil. Push it back into the pickup, tighten it up, back in your guitar, and hey presto, you are out of phase. Now, there is much discussion as to whether the two methods yield different results, but to be honest, the biggest difference is that if you do it electronically, it is reversible via a kind of switch or a push-pull pot or something like that. So if you're looking to have both options available, that's probably a good way to go. If not, give it a go. Just push the magnet out of the sides, as I said, 180 degrees round to the side and back into the pickup, and you are out of phase. So why is Peter Green's neck pickup upside down in his Les Paul? As you can imagine, this is the topic of much debate online, and the short answer is that we don't really know. All we can do is take educated guesses. What we do know for certain is that in late 65 or early 66, Peter's guitar went in for some repair work to one Sam Lee, who ran a shop on Gerrard Street in Soho in London. Sam, well-respected guitar repair guy who, by his own admission, wasn't all that familiar with electronics or pickups, botched the job in short, and when Peter got the guitar back, he found that the neck pickup was now actually out of phase with itself, Sam having wound one of the coils the wrong way on an old record turntable. Peter obviously took the guitar back, and Sam, in an effort to remedy or rectify his mistake, first flipped the magnet before actually turning the pickup upside down in the guitar, of course resulting in Peter's famous out of phase middle position. Whether or not this is entirely the case is of course still very much debated, and many put it down to the fact that when Sam rewound one of the coils, he used heavy form var wire, which is of course more akin to Strat pickups. I guess ultimately, unless Kirk Hammett, his current owner, decides to open it up, we're probably never going to know. Now, despite Peter's out-of-phase tone being the result of an unorthodox, shall we say, repair, many Gibsons actually left the factory in the 1950s out of phase as stock. Now, the reason for this is unclear, but all I know is that out of the 5 1950s gold tops that I've played, 3 of them have been magnetically out of phase as they left the factory, including Bernie Marsden's 1952 model, as well as a rather spectacular 1955 all-gold model that I did a video on a few months ago. As I said, the reason for this is unclear, but I think I'm also correct in saying that Joe Bonamassa has a burst which is magnetically out of phase as stock as well. As well as that distinctive hollow quack, a Les Paul that is out of phase actually has a cool little trick up its sleeve as well, and that is by simply rolling one of the pickup's volumes back even very slightly, you drastically alter the phase relationship between the pickups, meaning that you can make that very characteristic out of phase sound much less pronounced, an infinite kind of amount of shades of grey in between. Really does give you an incredible palette of tonal options. I'm going to demonstrate that on that Daniels Guitars single cut gold top that you saw at the start of the video, which of course has an original set of Gibson 1950s P90s, which, as you guessed, left the factory out of phase. So there you have it. For something which undeniably started out as a mistake, whether it was a Gibson factory oversight or a misguided repair, inadvertently spawned some of the most classic, recognisable guitar tones of all time. It's not really a sound that you hear much anymore, to be honest, but I for one am definitely going to leave one of my Les Paul style guitars out of phase in that middle position. It's incredibly inspiring to play and produces some really unique tones that you definitely don't associate with the Les Paul. It really is an inspiring sound. A massive thank you to Hugh Price of Guitar.com and Tone Twins TV for all the info provided for this video. Goodness knows what it would have turned out like without him. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe, hit the bell icon if you haven't already, and I shall see you next week for another episode of Friday Fretworks. Cheers guys, take care, and I'll see you soon.